Hello, everyone, and welcome to Anime Club After Dark, the podcast that delves into all things anime, manga, and otaku culture related. I'm your host, Sho, and joining me tonight, we have Alex Senpai.
Sho, we're gonna change the world with our songs.
First you have to learn to sing, Alex.
Hey, just because I can't sing it's never stopped anyone from getting into the music industry.
Damn, I mean, you're not wrong. But we are not here to talk about bad singers. We are here to talk about talented singers.
We're not here to talk about my failed dreams.
No, not your failed dreams. Yeah, well, what? Okay. Sure, we're going to hear about your sad failed dreams that have been realized by this anime, which is the anime of the year 2019, called Carole and Tuesday.
Carole and Tuesday.
That was so cringe.
That's how they all say it.
It sounds worse when you say it.
Carole and Tuesday.
Please don't do it again.
Yeah, Carole and Tuesday. So I think the best place to start with this is just to put out there, this is directed by the man, the myth, the legend, Shinichiro Watanabe. So if you don't know who he is, where have you fucking been? He directed and wrote Cowboy Bebop, Samurai Champloo, Space Dandy, Terror in Resonance, a couple of other things. He did, I think he directed a couple of episodes of Genius Party. He also directed Macross Plus, was a co-producer and involved in the music production of Michiko and Hachin. So the man has been around, and he's been attached to some really top-tier anime projects. Oh, and lest I forget, he is also directing and writing the upcoming Blade Runner anime. So yeah, there's that too. This man clearly has a hard-on for like Western style storytelling and Western style stories, and it kind of tells in his previous works. This anime was also produced by Studio Bones, probably currently most well known for doing MHA.
I guess.
They've done some other stuff in the past. It's pretty damn good.
Yeah. I find it surprising that like I really dislike most, if not all, of Shinichiro Watanabe's works, but I really love this one. So, but I definitely see the similarities. Like, it's definitely a brand Watanabe work, but for some reason I like this one more.
Also, if you look at a lot of his older stuff, especially Cowboy Bebop and Samurai Champloo, you can tell that the man is a music fanatic. Like, he loves incorporating music into his storytelling, and Carole and Tuesday is obviously an anime original. It's something that was came out of his own mind, and I almost wonder if after having watched this, if this wasn't just a passion project that he had an idea for all along. That instead of actually creating a story or creating music around a story, he actually created a story around music.
It's a lot of meta that I'm gonna pretend to understand. Yes,
I don't know. Did. I feel like this. You kind of mentioned it. Like, it's definitely got his stamp on it. Even if it's you've mentioned in the past, you're not a fan of Cowboy Bebop or Samurai Champloo. I don't even think you've even seen Space Dandy.
I haven't seen Champloo or Dandy. I have seen Bebop, and I didn't like it.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, it's definitely got his stamp on it for sure.
Yeah. So I thought we'd start off with the genres that this show is. The first
genre runs the gamut of a few of them.
The first genre that I wrote down on this document, I know Alex doesn't agree with, and is also not listed on the mal description of it, but I definitely think it is a cutesy moe shoujo show.
Okay, I agree with all of that. Well, maybe not so much the cutesy. I definitely don't agree with the moe. It like the art style is not moe in any regards. The shoujo part, I'll buy that. Like, it's definitely a shoujo-esque story.
If you define moe as blob, then no. But if you define moe as something that makes you want to protect it, then I would consider this moe, because
I
the main
guess.
mainly because the main characters, Carole and Tuesday, they're very pure, simple, hardworking characters, which is very typical of moe and shoujo.
Hmm.
And to me, it seems like it falls into those categories very easily. Also, their physical character designs are very cutesy. You have Tuesday, who has like the cutesy freckles, the Lolita Victorian fashion, and then you have Carole, which has like she wears overalls, which is like very like
Tomboyish.
I wouldn't even call it. It is boyish, but in an anime sense, I would consider it like odd cutesy. I don't know. I think both of their character designs are very, very moe inducing.
I don't know if moe. I'll go with the cutesy aspect of it, but not the moe. I definitely shoujo. I will give you the shoujo like carte blanche, but I just can't buy the fact that this is a moe. Like when I think of moe, I think of Kyoto Animation Moe Moe Kyun. That's what I think of.
Well, that's blob moe. Because
Yeah,
moe has
that's
many different iterations.
I
Don't be so
guess.
closed-minded, Alex.
I
Um,
guess it's just Kyoto Animation is so thoroughly cornered the market on moe. It's hard for me to think of moe as anything else.
and another thing that makes this shoujo is quite obviously that Carole and Tuesday, the two main characters, are women. So, I mean, and they are actual characters. They're not like uh, self inserts to look at the male characters. They're actually interesting in and of themselves. So, that's a further reason why it's shoujo, which might be a reason why I like it more than Watanabe's other works, because a lot of his other works don't have female protagonists, except for Michiko and Hachin, which I haven't watched. So maybe I would like that.
Well, and that's not actually his story or
Oh, okay.
he didn't actually direct that. He co-produced it and
Oh,
he worked on the music.
interesting. That
So,
sounds like
I mean,
something
he
I
was
might
working
like,
with
though.
someone else on that one. It wasn't strictly his idea.
Interesting.
Actually, the person who directed Michiko and Hachin is the same person who directed Yuri on Ice, whose name escapes me momentarily.
Well, I like both of these.
Sayo Yamamoto.
Yes, I do like Yuri on Ice, so maybe I should watch Michiko and Hachin.
It is very good.
Well, one reason I brought up this genre that I self-identified with it is that I don't actually like a lot of shoujo shows. So it's surprising that I actually liked this one. And I feel like I liked this one over the plethora of other shoujo anime is that it's not just cutesy. It has so much more going for it that we'll talk about later. And, even though on the surface I'm not into the cutesy shoujo, it had so much other things going on for it that I completely loved it.
Yeah, well, it's not your typical shoujo story. It doesn't have like your typical shoujo. Take care of me. I'm just a klutzy girl like stereotype.
No, it's definitely has a deeper plot, deeper characters, a lot more going on, a lot more facets to explore.
I attribute a lot of that to the fact that this story pretty much fully centers around music and the making of it.
Definitely, that is another main genre. That is the main genre, basically, of the show. And similarly to shoujo, I actually don't like music genred anime, because a lot of anime that are music genred are idol shows, and
Sadly, you're right.
they're the most vapid, shallow, boring shows on the face of the earth. So, the music genre is not does not have a good reputation in my mind. So it's surprising I even checked this out, because it's shoujo, it's music. Like, I'm not interested in these genres, but I think why Carole and Tuesday may have been more my jam than all of these other idol shows is that it focused way more on the Western industry, rather than the
Yeah.
Eastern industry. And also
Well,
there are many other reasons, but I think that's the main reason.
I would honestly say that the deeper I got into this, the more I was like questioning, is this like some kind of criticism of the Eastern music industry? Because we think of like the Eastern music industry, especially K-pop now, it's like these artists aren't exactly weeded out because they have the most talent. It's almost as if they go to these farms and they're forced to become musicians. Like, it's not something that they would have probably done voluntarily. It seems like something their parents might have gotten them into. And the more I watched Carole and Tuesday, the more I thought, is this like some kind of backdoor criticism of the Eastern music industry?
I mean, I guess the Eastern music industry is a bit more commercialized.
Commercialized. That's the phrase I was looking for.
I mean, like, I think just like the Eastern industry, there's a lot of Western celebrities that don't have a lot of talent. There's a lot of Western celebrities that are groomed from early childhood. I personally don't see this as a criticism, but it could be. I think it's just Watanabe paying homage to an aspect of Western culture, which he's clearly
which he does in a lot
of
of his works. I mean, you look at Cowboy Bebop, and it's essentially like the soundtrack of that show is an homage to jazz music.
And another core aspect of this show, genre-wise, is that it is science fiction. The entire premise of the show is that the music industry is taken over by AIs, and there's no more live musicians and no more live vocalists. It's all electronic. And then Carole and Tuesday come in and they bring something old but something new back into the industry that no one else is doing, and they breathe life into a robotic husk of an industry and show that emotions are the core of music. Like, on paper, that is what the show is about, but I don't think they really explored that a lot in the show.
I don't think they explored that enough, if I'm quite honest. If I have one major criticism of this anime, it's probably that they didn't explore this concept near enough.
They really didn't. And honestly, I mean, I feel like they forgot that was the premise of the show halfway through. And I think the show would be perfectly fine if this was never included in the show. If it was just a normal, like, setting, not on Mars.
That's another thing. This entire show takes place on Mars, like on this terraformed Mars, which is really an odd choice. I don't know if that helped or hurt the story in any way.
I found it completely irrelevant. Yeah, I don't think it did do anything for the story.
I will say I found it irrelevant because there were certain parts of it, of the anime as a whole, where I thought, this doesn't make a whole lot of sense. I'll give you a good example of that. Toward the end of the show, of the anime, there was a scene where Carole and Tuesday are like standing or sitting on the roof of their apartment building and looking up at the sky, and you can see Earth very clearly in the sky, like so clearly you can make out like continents and clouds and stuff. And I just thought, ooh, that's not right. That's if you were on Mars and you looked up, you would not see Earth like that in the sky. Well, I don't know how they've managed to like lasso Mars closer to Earth.
LOL.
But I don't know, it was something like that, but like, okay, if you're gonna actually set it on some kind of futuristic terraform Mars, fine, but don't take me out of it like that, because anyone who knows anything about the scale of the universe is gonna look at that and say, ooh, no.
Yeah, that is true. They could have definitely explored that a bit more, but I mean, it's not that. I don't think it's that relevant to the overall story, as in, like, I don't consider it a hindrance to the story.
No.
I just consider it something they could have expanded on.
But it's just when they do stuff like that, it's very noticeable for someone like me who actually knows what it would actually look like if you looked up at the sky on Mars.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's pretty common sense. Like, we don't see the intricacies of the Mars surface from Earth, so why would vice versa work?
Yeah.
So let's move on to just the general visuals of the show. I really enjoyed the character designs. I thought they were really polished. They looked great. Each character had their defining uh, traits that were visually represented. Definitely no same face. They all had looked very different, and I liked each of their quirky aesthetics. I definitely really enjoyed it.
I like that aspect of the character design, the fact that every single character had a very unique look. So, I mean, just by looking at them, even if you were looking at them from behind based on the outfits they were wearing, you knew who it was.
Yeah.
You didn't even have to see their face. I will say one thing about the character design that actually took some getting used to. I would say it took me about 3 or 4 episodes to really get used to it. It kind of has that Code Geass thing where a lot of people are really skinny, and they have long limbs, and some of them have very noticeably long necks.
I didn't find that an issue. But...
After a few episodes, I just ceased to even really notice it. It's just kind of a quirk of the character design and the art style, I think, that they decided to go with. I don't necessarily think it was a bad decision. It's just that, like, from an aesthetic standpoint, for me personally, I thought, ooh, some of these characters need to start eating some burgers or something. They're way too skinny.
Oh no. Yeah. So when I was watching the preview trailer for Carole and Tuesday, the thing that convinced me to actually watch the show was the animation. It was so beautifully animated, and like they weren't doing like crazy stunts, just their movements were just fluid and really pretty to look at. And when I watched the actual show, it was definitely consistent with the trailer. And this animation was it was the best part of it was when the characters were doing their dance sequences.
Yeah.
I'm very impressed that they animated each of these sequences like very specifically choreographed for each song. And like they animated the most trivial of movements. Like a lot of the female singers would like wave their hands around to the melody, and that's something you would see in a real life performance. It's something very trivial that you wouldn't think of wasting quote unquote a lot of animation budget into, but they did animate that very fluidly, and honestly it paid off so much. I mean, there was actual dance sequences, but just the people moving on stage while the songs were going really made this a top tier show for me, because I'm pretty sure everyone, but I especially love dance sequences in anime. If there was a show that was only dance sequences, I would watch it. It's just so adorable and cute and great. I love it. And Carole and Tuesday invested a lot of animation budget into animating these dances.
Don't lie, you were dancing along, weren't you?
Oh my god, yes, I was. How did you know?
I had a feeling. I will say, so you brought up before idol shows, right? Mm-hmm. One of the things that a lot of idol shows are criticized for, and I think rightly so, is the over-reliance on CGI during dance sequences. You didn't really see that a whole lot in Carole and Tuesday. In fact, if there ever was a sequence that was a dance sequence that was entirely done in CGI, I can't think of one.
Definitely not. There was some CGI, I think, in some crowds, but for the dance sequences, there was none.
Yeah, I think that was probably the biggest strength that the choreography, like the dance and song sequences in the anime had going for it, was the fact that they didn't have that reliance on CGI like so many idol shows do. And some of those idol shows, they have that really bad CGI. It just takes you completely out of it. Something that's supposed to be, I know that the focus in idol shows is supposed to be on the music because
Really?
they're supposed to be making music, but when you're interspersing that with just absolutely terribly animated dance choreography, even if the choreography is good, if it's terribly animated, it takes me out of it so much, and that never happened, not a single time with Carole and Tuesday.
Yeah, another thing that I hate about idol shows is that, okay, you say that it's for the music. All of the idol shows I've watched, the music is shit. The singers are bad, and and I only watch it for the dance sequences, which half the time are not that great. Like, all I want is a dance sequence. Could someone give me a dance sequence?
All for want of a dance sequence.
Yes. Um, so, I think we should move on to honestly the best part of this show, which are the insert songs.
Yeah,
because
they're pretty good. There's a ton of them too. Like for a 24 episode show, there's so many insert songs.
I have not heard a more quality, highly produced, talentedly composed and sung like set of songs in an anime than this show. Honestly, my expectations were blown out of the water. I have not experienced this quality of music from an anime ever. It's just completely unprecedented.
Yeah. I think, well, you mentioned it to me, I think, while the show was actually still airing, that a lot of these songs, maybe not all of them, but a lot of them are like radio quality songs, or they could be.
Definitely. Like, I would not be surprised if I just turned on the radio and I heard something that sounded like a Carole and Tuesday song, because they sounded like something I would hear on the radio. And
Which, speaking of which, I think we have to kind of put out there a very interesting decision that was made for this. So, and I'm going to be really curious to see how Carole and Tuesday actually gets dubbed. I'm assuming that Netflix is going to be doing the dub, seeing as that's who picked it up in the West. But for the Japanese subtitled version, obviously the characters are voiced by Japanese seiyuu, by voice actors. But when they start singing, they are the vocals switch to actual Western singers that they found. And the amazing thing is that the Western singers that they actually got to do the songs in English sound, I won't say they sound exactly like the Japanese seiyuu, but they're not far off.
yeah, for a number of them, they're quite similar, but sometimes there's a pretty big difference. The one that comes to mind is Piotr.
Like, yeah,
his
first of all, the way he sings, like, it's almost like he's singing faster than the lip flaps are moving, which makes me think that the person who was actually doing the singing didn't actually have access to the visuals of the mouth flaps to kind of sync it up. But also the fact that when they switch over, it's so noticeable that it's a completely different person.
Yeah, like the Japanese voice actor is very nasally and high pitched, and then the singer is very deep and smooth. So I'm just like, who possessed you and started singing?
I had the exact same like thing happen when the first time I heard Piotr sing in English. I'm like, okay, like, this is good. I mean, your singing is pretty good, but it's very obvious you're a different person.
Yeah, and honestly, the fluent English is such a high selling point, because it's so rare to find that in anime, and even rarer to find that in the music of an anime. So I am just so impressed and blown away by this. And a lot of the songs were really, really great. So some particular insert songs that I thought I'd talk about. The first main song that we hear, "The Loneliest Girl" by Carole and Tuesday. When I first heard that in, I think it was the first episode, girl, I got chills. That was so beautiful, so emotional. It was honestly like, ugh, it killed me. It sold me on the show. It was a perfect way to start the anime, and it was an amazing song.
Yeah, it was also a really perfect way, I thought, to show off this effect of having two different voice actors, one for the actual dialogue and one for the music, and how like seamlessly they transitioned.
So later on in the show, we get to a point where there's a singing competition, and one of the contestants, OG Bulldog, sings trap opera, which
Yeah, that was interesting.
which I don't know what you thought of it, but honey, that's something I would listen to.
It was interesting. Like two genres of music you wouldn't think go together at all, but it works.
It reminded me of Lindsay Sterling, who does electronic violin, which is also two very different genres mashed together. And honestly, like the canon judges for that music competition thought it was ridiculous, but I thought it was pretty good, honestly. So
Yeah,
I don't know.
I'd like to point out that the singing competition, which takes up, I would say, 25% of the first half of the anime, is obviously modeled on singing competitions like American Idol and things of that nature. I also like the fact that they even include someone who's supposed to be a stand-in for Simon Cowell.
I didn't catch that, but probably.
I thought that was just, it was great.
There's a lot of nods to the Western music industry, and I really enjoy all of them. And definitely the sing competition nod, thoroughly enjoyed.
Yeah, I don't know if there's a Japanese version of something like American Idol or America's Got Talent or something like that. I actually don't know. I probably should have looked that up before we did this. But yeah, I just wonder if it's something that the Japanese audience would even be aware of, or the average Japanese audience member would be aware of.
I'm not sure, but I feel like it's definitely a bigger phenomenon in the West than it is the East.
I think so too. I don't know if anyone is listening to this and they actually know about that. Please send us some links to Japanese version of like American Idol.
Yep. Please do. Another entry into the singing competition was by the Mermaid Sisters.
Oh my god.
Which, let's just talk about the Mermaid. No, we can talk about them later. Let's just talk about their song, which was a cappella swearing in a very like nice, cheery tone, which honestly is something I would listen to.
I mean, yeah, I guess it was probably the only time during this entire watching Carole and Tuesday that I genuinely laughed out loud, because I didn't expect it. First of all, like, way to subvert my expectations like perfectly for what they were going to sing. And just the fact that it made me laugh just made me love it so much. I mean, it's completely ridiculous, and it's like they get booted off the show, which who wouldn't boot them off the show after this? But like, it's in the middle of this like no holds barred singing competition. Like, it's great that I was able to laugh at something.
See, your reaction is definitely the intended reaction, but to me, it's like I listen to this kind of stuff and I like it, so I'm like, this is just normal for me. I'm like, what's so special about this? But I didn't.
The funny thing is, I can actually imagine you singing like this, though.
Me singing like that, honey? I wish.
Not necessarily. No, I'm not necessarily saying the harmony. I'm talking about like the actual content of the lyrics. I could just imagine you singing swear words.
Thanks. I'll take that as a compliment. And a lot of Angela's songs were premiered in the singing competition, such as Move Mountains, All I Want, and Light a Fire.
I believe all but two of the songs she sings are in the singing competition.
I think so. I think you're right. And honestly, I loved the Angela songs. I I think Angela
Except,
was my favorite voice. I definitely loved so many of her songs. Uh, every time she performed, I was okay. Every week, I was waiting. Like, I was so like I don't know how to say this, but I was at the end of every episode. I was looking forward to the next one to hear the premiere of the new songs so badly. I was like, when is the next episode coming? I need the new song. And Angela always delivered. She always gave me a fucking award-winning performance, and I lived for her music.
Yeah, yeah. I think I don't think there was a single Angela song that I disliked entirely. I don't think you can say the same thing though, because there was one song that she sang you didn't like.
Yeah, I didn't like the song she sang at the Grammys before she collapsed. That was
At the gun. Oh wait, no, that was you're talking about the Grammy performance. I thought you were talking about the collaboration she did with At the Gun.
that was not bad. It was okay. It wasn't like one of my favorites, but see I didn't like the EDM part of that song, but I liked the Angela part. So
You like the vocals, but not the music.
yeah.
Okay.
And after the singing competition, Angela debuted with "Breathe Again" as her single, and honestly, I loved "Breathe Again." And the producers of the show took so long to officially release the full version of "Breathe Again." I was so angry when I first listened to "Breathe Again" when the episode premiered. I was dying to get my hands on the full version, and it took so long to release. Oh my god. But it was
so
amazing.
I know we're talking about insert songs and we can keep talking about it. I do, before we move on though with the music, I want to talk about the OPs and the EDs because we haven't talked on those, and those are, I thought they were all really good.
I didn't really care for any of them except for the second ED, which was by Angela.
Of course. I don't know. I loved the second OP. Polly Jean.
It's okay.
I don't know. I really loved the song. I thought it was like it encapsulated like the concept of Carole and Tuesday, the characters, really well. I like the sort of, I don't even know what you call the visuals for that OP.
Like watercolor.
Watercolors. I want to say juvenile, but that sounds so mean.
I know what you mean. Like very childish.
Very simple.
Yeah.
Yeah, not unpolished, very simple. It kind of looks like juvenile watercolors. That's the best. I don't say that as a slight. Like it fits the song really well, I think.
Yep.
I don't know. I love the OPs and the EDs. I look forward I never skipped them.
I did.
So mean.
And one last song I wanted to talk about was the very last song that was premiered on this show, which was "Mother." I didn't particularly like the song for its catchiness, but I did like the meaning behind it, and I thought the lyrics were very well chosen. Yeah, I thought I really liked the lyrics behind that.
Actually, I liked it in general. I liked the music that they went with. I like the fact that they brought pretty much all of these characters back. I mean, some of these characters who you thought may have been incidental characters who were just there to fill a role for an episode, they were back and they were singing again. That was nice. Especially a lot of the characters from the singing competition came back. I thought that was really cool. It had a very "We Are the World" vibe. So
definitely,
for those who
definitely
may not know, since it's before your time for sure, and it's certainly it's even before my time. "We Are the World" was a collaboration that was done in the 80s. Yeah, in the 80s, by a couple of dozen different musicians. I think it was for AIDS research, if I'm not mistaken. It's either for AIDS or it was for African aid. I can't remember. It's one of those two, though. But yeah, it had that very We Are the World vibe, especially when considering the meaning behind it, because it was meant to like sway political opinion.
Oh, see, what I personally remember is We Are the World 25 for Haiti.
Yes, that was also something that happened. It was essentially the same thing, just with more contemporary artists.
Yeah, so that's like how I personally saw it.
Yeah,
because I was
sorry.
alive
The
when
old
that happened.
motherfucker here is going back to the 80s.
Well, I like draw from personal experience. I don't know what you draw from, but yeah, definitely another nod to the Western industry that I enjoyed. So we can talk about some of the recurring things in the show, as well as the general plot. So I know there's something you wanted to talk about.
Yeah, okay, so one of the things I loved about this, especially the since this is a story is ostensibly about music and the making of music, was the fact that almost every time you saw someone using an instrument, it was a real instrument, like a licensed instrument. Tuesday plays a Gibson acoustic guitar. Carole plays an actual Nord keyboard. They use in the second half they use Neumann microphones. I thought that was a really, really cool thing to do. I'm glad that they were able to license this stuff. And actually, in general, there's a lot of usage of brand name things in this anime, and it's something you don't see a lot of in anime. You see a lot of faux name brand stuff, like instead of like Amazon, it'll be Amazon or something like that. And they didn't really do that a whole lot in this anime. Like, another thing they use a lot of is Instagram, and they actually just say Instagram, and you look at their phones and it's actually fucking Instagram, which is another thing I want to know. When the fuck does this take place? Like, it's gotta be in the future, right? But how far into the future are they still using Instagram?
LOL. That's a good question.
I love that, because as someone myself who really enjoys music, it's really great seeing these nods to actual instrument makers and things like that. That's just something that an anime like K-On! Also did, where all the characters were playing real instruments. Mm-hmm. And it just helps. It helps with the immersion of it.
Definitely. I get pulled out sometimes when they do the Amazon thing or the Mug Ronalds.
McRonald's.
Yeah, it pulls me out a little, but I was definitely kept my attention on the story and not
and
on
things like
else.
Things like South by Southwest, which is a real thing, or the Grammys.
Yeah.
It was really great that they were able to do that. I wonder how much they had to pay to actually use those names, but whatever. And then when they're actually some of the characters talk about their musical inspirations, they talk about actual living, breathing artists. Tuesday, towards the beginning of the show, talks about being really inspired by Cyndi Lauper. Apparently, if you go to the Carole and Tuesday website, Carole is supposed to be inspired by Beyonce, Adele, and Aretha Franklin. I just thought that was really cool. Also, something I thought was really cool. So the eye catches, which are those things that pop up in the middle of the episode. It's when it's shown on TV. It's when they go to commercial. You see like actual records being used, and it's the records where each episode title gets its name from. So there's like one with the Beach Boys, one with Aerosmith. And it was really cool that the episodes took their titles from actual Western song titles. It's very, very JoJo's of them.
It was honestly, I didn't really get a number of the references because they were all very old, but I did appreciate it. No, I did appreciate it though.
I understood all of them.
I don't know if you should be proud of that or not.
I don't know. I know you're not proud of me for it.
All I can say is I'm proud of myself for not recognizing it. Uh,
Wow.
yeah, but that was a great little Easter eggs that they dropped in, and
Hmm.
that was definitely great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know you're just sitting there thinking, God, he's an old motherfucker.
I
Why do
mean,
I associate with him?
those are your words, not mine, honey. You're so in your head. Like, I wouldn't say that. I appreciate
I'm
you.
not saying you're saying it. I'm saying you're thinking it.
I appreciate you for your unique perspective. Okay. So another aspect of this show that is related to the plot is that this is a very much an underdog show. The characters are supposed to be underdogs. I mean, Tuesday is a runaway with no real, like, she's rich, but she doesn't get any support or backing from her parents or her associates. She basically has to make a name for herself. And Carole is just hopping between part-time jobs that she's not good at.
She a broke bitch. Let's call it like it is. She a broke
Yeah,
bitch.
she broke as hell, and she's a busker. And that's all. That's like, she's basically, Tuesday and Carole are at the bottom of the barrel of the music industry, if you could even consider where they start as part
I,
of the music industry.
I also like the fact that I got a chuckle out of this when Carole is going around doing all the part-time jobs at the beginning of the anime. I like the fact that as she keeps getting fired, she keeps getting hired for more and more ridiculous jobs.
Yeah, that was pretty hilarious sequence. I enjoyed that.
Especially the one where she gets hired as a professional mourner, which is a real job that exists, by the way.
Oh, I didn't know that. Wow.
I don't know, some people die and there's not a lot of people to mourn them, so they leave money behind to hire professional mourners. How vain can you be?
Mm-hmm. And like, speaking of that, there are also a lot of comedic moments in this show. Um, the show switches between comedy to drama to like heartwarming underdog story. It has a little bit of everything, and I think it's pretty well balanced.
I love the underdog aspect of the story, though, by the way, because that's one of my favorite types of stories, especially in anime, because I don't know, the Japanese seem to do underdog stories really, really well. It's just I don't know. I love the fact that it was portrayed as legitimately coming from the bottom up. And even Tuesday, who probably had I won't say necessarily a reason, but certainly had the ability, if she wanted to maybe dig into her family's treasury a little bit and maybe prop herself up, didn't go for that, even if she could have.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Actually, I personally did not like the underdog aspect, only because it felt forced later on in the show. I definitely like underdog.
I see what you mean.
Yeah, I definitely like underdog stories in general. I do think they are a bit overused in anime. I think anime is just too into it.
It's overused in shonen for sure. I'll give you that.
Yes, and like,
That's
I definitely
you see a lot in shoujo, though.
That's true.
The
It
concept
is
of
not
the underdog story.
true. That is very true. And I was perfectly fine with it at the beginning of the show, but when I was watching the beginning or the first bit of the show, I was really hoping that once they get big, they don't stay underdogs, because I feel that's very, very poor writing. Like, you're trying to stay consistent with the show, but in the situation is not realistic that they would still be underdogs. It's something very cheesy that you would see from like a sitcom or like a episodic show that has to maintain the status quo even though it doesn't make sense, which this show is not an episodic show. And I really hoped they would grow out of the underdog thing, but they didn't. Like, even when they were successful releasing hits, they were still living in a broke down storage unit. And like they were still like begging on the street. They were still busking even when they were like releasing hit singles. So that's one thing I have a complaint about, is that, you know, you don't always you can start an underdog, but we don't have to stay it. We can if they moved on from the underdog, I feel like their characters would have been given an opportunity to grow a little more, and we would have seen a bit more aspects of their personality.
Maybe.
Yeah, that's just my 2 cents.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely get where you're coming from. I think there is still a little bit of like a realism aspect to it, though, because there's a lot of independent musicians, and that's essentially what they are. Even by the end, they're independent musicians because they still haven't signed a contract with the label by the end of the show. There's a lot of independent musicians in real life who, even if they release like 1 or 2 hit singles, they still will maintain a part-time job for a while until they believe that they can make an actual go of it and make a career out of being musicians. So in that sense, I think that they maintaining a certain status as an underdog toward the end was realistic, but I get where you're coming from, and I do kind of agree that, you know, they've done a lot of stuff by the end of it where they shouldn't still be considered an underdog. Maybe toward the bottom of the professional totem pole, maybe, but not an underdog.
Yeah. Now, the main part of the plot is definitely the music aspect, and we've already talked about it, but this show focused on the Western industry as opposed to the Eastern. And that definitely was a huge selling point for me, especially since I was a huge pop music nerd when I was in high school. I used to watch all of the cheap, stupid music-related promotional events, interviews. I was so deep into that trash, and watching this made me relive that trash lifestyle, and I loved it. Honey.
I mean, I'm not going to say that I was a whole lot different growing up, although I wouldn't say it was high school. I'd say it's more middle school for me. But the difference is what the people I was interested in. Like, I was interested in people like the fucking Backstreet Boys. I don't even know, when were you in high school? What were you actually listening to?
Backstreet Boys was my grade school, honey.
Uh-huh.
I'm so sorry. It's just the truth, okay? I was in high school when Nicki Minaj and Lady Gaga premiered their debut singles.
A little behind the scenes information here. This man never shuts up about Nicki Minaj.
Yas, queen, because she is the queen and she deserves to be worshipped. Yes, but I was all over those artists. Like, I knew every single tidbit of information about them.
And here you are now.
Amazing. But yes, so they did a lot of nods to aspects of the Western music industry, which,
and they also did not focus on just the positive aspects of the industry either. They did show some of the negative aspects, especially the idea of how easy it is to get hooked on the idea of being famous, and number 2, how to let that go to your head and kind of get you off track and ruin your life.
Definitely. So going with that, one of the negative parts of the industry that we saw was that in one of the later episodes, Angela was cyberstalked by a person going by the Black Knight, and I believe she was attempted, and there was an attempted assassination, I believe. The stalker, because I guess he felt like he wasn't getting enough attention from her, decided, well, if I can't have you, no one can. Which honestly, it felt super real, because not just celebrities, but, well,
anyone famous.
Yes. But like something that I personally would uh, I personally see is that internet celebrities get this all the time, because I see like the comments on popular social media or content creators on their work. I see tons of comments, of death threats and, like creepy comments. And the whole plot thread about the stalker with Angela felt super real, especially Angela's reaction. That she was like so uncomfortable, but she wasn't sure how to like vocalize it clearly, but she was very much not happy with the state of affairs.
Yeah, well, and then she's also being told, the fact that she's in the public light now, you can't let this get to you. You can't show people that this bothers you. Even if it bothers you immensely, you can't let it show.
Yeah. So I thought that little subplot was really well done, and honestly, it felt really accurate to how a lot of celebrities experience harassment by their fans.
I would say it's even more so, like you said, internet celebrities, especially like in the age of like the YouTuber, where I think there's a lot of people who see people like this, and it's like more so than like a professional industry like the music industry or Hollywood or something like that. These people at one time were just like the people that watched them. They were nobodies that didn't have any followers, and then just one day they decided, hey, I'm gonna try and make a go of this, and then they get some followers, and it's like there's a lot of people that look at that and say, well, you should be able to like empathize with me, or you should be able to understand where I'm coming from when I say these things. And then when these people get big enough and they can't respond to every single thing that people are constantly sending them, and it's really easy to, as a fan, to become really disheartened by that, because you feel like these people just don't care about their fans anymore just because they didn't return one of a million messages that they get every day from you.
Yep. It's definitely something that
very realistic
goes on. Yeah. And another issue that is shown in this show is the abuse of medication. Angela overdoses on pain medication, and one of the minor characters, Flora, is seen like popping pills by the handful.
And she's also an alcoholic.
Yes, we also see that. So many celebrities experience drug addiction and
this is pervasive within entertainment in general, especially here in the United States.
Yeah.
It was immense. Like the idea of popping painkillers was like insanely widespread in the music industry in the late 70s through the 80s.
Yeah. And something I find interesting is that Lindsay Lohan released a song about medication within a week of the episode where Angela overdoses on medication. Coincidence?
Yes.
No.
Why would you even?
But the negative parts of the industry are not the only parts that are reflected in this show.
True, but I'm glad I'm very glad that they did put that in there, because the entertainment industry in general is not all sunshine and lollipops.
Yes, it definitely made the show feel more real and accurate and engaging. I also really enjoyed it.
So before we move on, because I think I know where you're going to go to, something else that does a really good job at portraying, especially with Angela, is the fact that some of these people that are forced, especially at a young age, into the entertainment industry, and especially music, aren't necessarily, it's not done of their own volition. A lot of it is their parents forcing them into it, thinking that the parents themselves are going to make their child famous. And it's not necessarily even the goal or the wish of the child. It's the wish of the parent, because it's something that they wanted in their childhood and didn't get.
Yes, and we see that,
which is what happens with Angela and her mother. I don't even know what it is. Gender seems like an afterthought in this show.
Okay.
I don't know. I don't know what Angela's mother was supposed to be. I used the
think
word mother in quotation marks.
think she's a trans woman.
That's what I assumed too. But I don't, well, of course, we also find out later that not Angela's real mother.
Yes. I have some thoughts about her mother, but we will talk about her later. Um, this whole concept personally made me think of Miley Cyrus, even though I don't think there's any explicit records of her having a bad relationship with her parents. But I mean, that's just one example that I personally related to. Because, you know, I was a Hannah Montana stan. Not really, but kind of. Yeah. So, moving on to the positive parts of the industry that this show portrayed, which one of the first ones is that Carole and Tuesday went to the Cydonia Festival, which is a music festival, which is something that occurs throughout the Western world in so many towns. And
you're talking about music festivals in general? I thought I've never heard of the Cydonia Music Festival before.
Just music festivals in general. I've been to a few, and I really liked that they included this aspect in the show because it was relatable to me. Obviously, we've already talked about the Mars Brightest singing competition. This singing competitions are very prevalent in the West. There are a lot of prominent ones. And
I'd also like to point out that at least for something like American Idol, typically the winners don't become famous. Like, they become famous for winning American Idol, but they don't go on to have lucrative recording careers.
That's true, but you know, for the most part, it's true. But some very few winners do succeed.
Yeah,
like, in the industry, but it's very, very,
sometimes,
very rare.
Sometimes the people that end up losing end up having a bigger career, which I find funny.
True. But again, I like the realism, and like you said, there's the Grammys. But yeah, I found this very relatable, very close to something I found passionate when I was growing up. So watching this from a different perspective, from Shinichiro Watanabe's imagination, I super enjoyed the whole structure of the show, of basically going through all the different iterations of the Western industry. And it was a great ride for me. And I feel like it was just something that was not maybe tailored for me, but definitely hit a lot of points that were sentimental to me. So yeah, that's a really major reason why I personally like the show.
We haven't really talked about this, but I definitely wanted to before we wrapped it up. So the second half of Carole and Tuesday involves like a really political story. It's more of a backstory, really, that comes to the forefront the further along you go. I was curious to what you thought about that, especially that it really isn't. It's sort of hinted at that Tuesday's mother is a politician in the first half, especially in the last couple episodes of the first half, and that she's running for president. And I'm just really curious to what you thought about bringing that closer and closer to the forefront as the show went on.
I enjoyed that subplot mostly because the messages it was trying to say were ones I agree with personally, and I'm pretty passionate about. But from a narrative standpoint, I don't think the political subplot had really anything to do with the main plot, and I don't really think it did anything for the show. So it was a bit out of left field. It's just kind of random.
Yeah, I kind of felt the same way too. I like they probably could have used a different if the end of the show was always supposed to be getting everyone together and, you know, making this "We Are the World" kind of song. I think maybe they could have, number one, they could have introduced this political aspect from the beginning, perhaps, and not made it so like nebulous until the second half. But I also think that there was something good about it for me because, depending on where you're listening to this podcast from, some of the issues that they were talking about are things that we're kind of having to deal with here in the United States now. So it was interesting to see that reflected in an anime because, American political issues aren't something you see in anime very often.
Yep. I definitely interpreted this portrayal as an allusion to the American political climate. And honestly, I did really appreciate the way they ended the whole political arc by Valerie rescinding her candidacy, because it's something that's very sugar-coated and very fairy tale ending, like something that's not very realistic.
Yeah, I mean that was probably the least realistic thing about the whole show.
But I feel like the American political climate is just so charged and just so honestly depressing to follow that I was happy that at least there's a fairy tale ending somewhere in the world, that because the actual climate is not looking too great.
Well, I mean, it's just kind of goes to show you that very few political matters end on a happy ending anyway, regardless of the outcome.
Probably.
So, I think that this probably ended the best way it could have, given how this subplot was introduced and how it was, strung along throughout the rest of the narrative. But yeah, like you say, I think that there's a lot. It's a very idealistic way to end the subplot itself. I'm pretty sure it's not very realistic. I mean, even if all of this evidence came to light, I doubt that any actual politician would rescind their candidacy.
I don't think so either.
They just pivot and say, that wasn't me.
Yeah, probably. So we can just finish this off by looking at each of the characters and thinking about, and talking about what we think about them. So the first one I have written down, I think she's the first character we see. Maybe not.
She is.
She is? Okay. Which is Tuesday. And I personally found her a bit boring. I mean, she had a cute personality, but I don't think she really changed a lot during the show. And
I would say if there's anyone in this story that's closest to the typical shoujo main character archetype, it's probably Tuesday.
Definitely.
That's all I got to say about it. I mean,
what did you think of her?
She's cute.
Oh, she's
cute.
That's all.
I mean,
okay.
I like her character design. She's cute. I like the fact that she's kind of I don't know what to do.
Oh, okay.
Also, freckles are really cute. I fucking love freckles.
Oh, okay. Sure. So, our second main character is Carole, which I really liked. My dad is an immigrant, and I am very pro-immigrants. So, I did just like her, character, her basic character background of being an immigrant that just automatically made me, what do you call it? Oh, made me identify with her. And I also really loved her moment with her dad. It was so heartwarming. I got so emotional when that scene it was so beautiful. Especially
do I need to give you a tissue?
Yes. Especially I loved how there was all these imposter parents. I thought that was funny. And then immediately after, she finds her real parent, who's a really nice guy and a really chill dude. I'm like, why? And I super loved her little arc with Ezekiel because they were so adorable as children, okay? And then there's such a romantic thing, childhood friends. I am into it. They're meant for each other. They're so good together. I ship it so much. Love that. So I did really like Carole, but at the same time, I don't think she really grew at all during the entire show. Her personality stayed the same. Her basic like principle stayed the same. She didn't really fluctuate at all. She was kind of static the whole time. So that's one complaint.
Honestly, I mean, I don't know if we're going to go through every single character here before we end, but I would say the only character who really changed a great deal throughout the course of the anime is Angela.
Yes, and that is why Angela, among other reasons, is my favorite character. I really enjoyed that she had high points, low points, and then she recovered and grew. And, you know, there's so many... Honestly, she had way more character development than the actual main characters. Like, she discovered herself, she uncovered mysteries, she broke down her personality and reconstructed it from scratch.
It's like watching Scooby-Doo.
Wait, what does that have to do with Scooby-Doo?
Solving mysteries.
Oh my god. Anyways, I appreciated the character growth. I also love Angela because she's a bad bitch, diva, cold-hearted, cold bitch. Love her.
A lot like you.
Yes. What else? I think that's it. No, yeah. I did like... Those were all the aspects of Angela.
I liked her character arc a lot. I like the fact that, you know, she definitely she grows a lot throughout the course of the story. I mean, she basically goes from being this cold-hearted diva bitch, pretty much, to this character you actually kind of want to root for by the end.
Sure. I always wanted.
Whereas when you see her, she's like, bitch, shut the fuck up.
Wow. I always wanted her to talk because I always loved her. She's a beautiful person. So unlike her mother, she's a beautiful person. So I don't know what you think about Dahlia.
I was very confused.
So when I was showing...
But accepting. I was accepting, but very confused.
When I showed my sister this show, and my sister saw Dahlia, she was like, is this offensive? And I'm like, okay, I personally didn't find it offensive, but...
I mean, again, this is something... I can't believe this wasn't ever, like, made of an issue in the show, especially considering how, I won't say backwards, but how not as far along Japan is in terms of, like, trans and, you know, gay rights and stuff like that. I'm really surprised that this wasn't made more of an, like, transgenderism wasn't made more of an issue, considering the fact that there's a couple of characters in this show that, while not necessarily explicitly stated to be, certainly have the appearance of being transgender.
Yeah. To be specific, I don't think her character design physically is offensive. I think she looks fine, personally.
Well, okay, I mean...
Clearly, that's not the popular opinion.
I won't say it's offensive, but I also won't say it's attractive either.
Clearly, some people think she looks bad, but I think she looks fine. Okay? But one offensive part is that apparently she abused her child because of her hormone medication, which to me feels like very offensive to trans people. And I don't know if there's anything else. I think that was all that I had to particularly say about Dahlia.
I don't know. I feel like I should shut up before I say something that John will have to edit out.
Okay. I also just wanted to talk about Tao for like a quick second. Like
Tao, Mr. Tao.
What was that?
I like how everyone uses honorifics with everyone else except Tao.
Well,
everyone just calls him Mr. Tao.
Well, he is an AI, so gotta address him with a proper lack of honorific. I found it kind of out of left field that he's Angela's, I don't know, stepbrother,
bear quote
half-brother?
Sister.
I don't know the exact relation.
I mean, not sister, brother.
Yes, he's her sister. Whatever. They're related somehow. That felt awkward. I don't know if I like that or not. I feel like that justifies the amount of screen time he got because he was related to Angela.
It also justifies the amount of like effort he puts into her in the story,
I guess.
I think.
But it just feels narratively awkward.
I think the idea of it isn't necessarily narratively awkward. The way it is introduced at the very end of the story is very awkward.
Yes, that is
If it had
true.
been if it had been introduced at maybe the halfway point or maybe the 3/4 mark, I think it would have been better.
Yes, I definitely agree.
Like right after Tao gets arrested might have actually been the better time to like make this known.
Yep. Definitely earlier than the time it was revealed, which was like the last episode.
It was the last episode, I think, when it was revealed, or maybe the next to last. Well, it may have been the next to last. Now that I think about it,
maybe.
It almost like it's like that thing I talk about with Darling in the Franxx. You can't introduce a major plot point during the climax.
No, you can't. It wasn't a major plot point, but it was a major character point.
Yeah, it was a major character arc sort of point, and you can't just be introducing brand new stuff to the story during the climax.
No, you can't. So I definitely agree with your complaints. And one last character I wanted to talk about was Artagon.
Artagon, my favorite, voiced by one of my favorite Japanese voice actors, Mamoru Miyano.
I found his like super selfish, super egotistical personality very entertaining to watch.
Yeah,
definitely.
He's got like the prima donna thing going on, sort of like Angela does in the beginning.
Sure, I guess the male version. It definitely is what I imagine DJs to be. Like in like my like fantasy. Like clearly they're not. Well, I don't think they're really like that, but
some probably are. I mean,
maybe.
Some of the bigger name ones that have been around for a while probably are like that.
I don't know. I feel like DJs realistically are just like very introverted, but their PR makes them seem very self-centered. So I'm perfectly fine with how Artagon was portrayed. I found it like funny, hilarious, and honestly, it was great to watch.
It was certainly fun. He also has a bit of a character arc where he grows by the end too, because when he's first introduced, as you say, he's seen as this really selfish, very self-aggrandizing, oh look at me, I'm the greatest because I've just been at the top forever and no one can touch me kind of attitude. Mm-hmm. But then by the end, especially after he loses all of his money because of his own hubris, and he has to kind of gain it all back, by the end he becomes this character you're like, yeah, you can do it.
Sure.
I say that because I feel like the art gun that you're introduced to in the very beginning of the story would not have helped Carole and Tuesday like he does at the end.
Maybe. Sometimes the characters kind of acted like convenient for the plot, so they were not always in character. So either way, I can see Artagon helping them, but I can see what you're saying.
Yeah. I also love the fact that he has like the classical good angel, bad devil thing going on after he loses his money and he's asked to try and write a new song. It's like, you can't. He's got the bad devil saying you can't do it, just give up, and he's got the good devil's like, come on, you can do it.
It's a very Artagon of him to have his own angel and devil that look exactly like him.
Yeah.
So, what is your overall impression of Carole and Tuesday, Alex?
The anime as a whole?
Yes.
Well, I wouldn't say it's Watanabe's best work, but I would say it's definitely like a solid 9.5 out of 10 for me. It's got its hiccups. It's not perfect by any means, in my opinion. But overall, I find it very, very enjoyable. It was a fun watch. It was a fun journey from beginning to end. The music was incredible. That concept of actually having all of the insert songs be in English is something that was really cool to see. I'd like to see more more shows that are based around music perhaps do this, or at least be open to the idea of bringing Western artists on board, because some of the, well, actually almost all of the songs, the insert songs, were written by Western artists. So it's something I'd like to see maybe more of in the future, especially if it's a story around Western music like this was. Trying to think if there's anything else I want to say. It's really fun, but it's a flaw. I would say it's a flawed masterpiece, honestly, if I had to choose a phrase to say what it is.
I can definitely get on board with that description of it. I gave it a 10 out of 10 on Mal, but I mean, Mal doesn't support decimal points, but I could definitely seeing it being a 9 point something. I personally enjoyed the heck out of it, specifically for that very particular niche that it itched of being about the Western music industry that is very unique for anime. Honestly, no other anime comes even close to what Carole and Tuesday provided in this. So from a purely unique factor, Carole and Tuesday blows it out of the water. All the other aspects, the animation, the characters, the plot is very decent to very good. So it's not perfect, like you said. There are definitely some places where it could have improved, where it fell a little short, but the high points are super, super high.
Yeah, the high points were insanely high, and the low points were just kind of in the middle.
Exactly. So overall, I enjoyed the hell out of it. I was definitely looking forward to every episode as it aired the most out of whatever was airing during the time it was airing. One of my favorite shows of 2019.
Certainly one of the most unique anime of 2019, perhaps of the 2010s.
Perhaps. I definitely think it's something you should check out if you haven't. Also, if you haven't while you're listening to this, but still.
Yeah, why have you gotten this far? It's a fucking spoiler cast. We told you what it was at the outset.
Well, it's something I would recommend to anime lovers and non-anime lovers alike. I think
that's something I was going to say. If you're trying to get someone into anime, this actually might not be a bad place to start, because it's not a very anime.
Yes,
if that makes sense.
It appeals to an audience that doesn't necessarily have to know anime tropes or any insider information. It's very accessible by a Western audience, and it's very polished and very high quality. So,
and the music is awesome,
of course. So I love the experience of Carole and Tuesday, and I was really happy with everything about it.
I will say one thing that before we go that is just baffling to me is why more people aren't talking about it. Like, I see a bunch of people, like the anime commentators on YouTube and whatnot, talking about things, and rightly so, things like Demon Slayer or Vinland Saga this year that, in all honesty, are really good. And we also have a Demon Slayer Spoilercast, which you should check out. But I don't see a lot. I haven't seen a lot of people talking about Carole and Tuesday, and that's sad, honestly, because more people should have paid attention to this. I will say, at least in the West, I attribute this to the fact that it was picked up by Netflix, and Netflix just refuses to release things week to week, and just they're waiting so long after the season's over to release this shit.
I don't think the second part of Carole and Tuesday is even released on Netflix yet.
No, it actually will be released on Christmas Eve.
Yes, so
in the West.
Maybe that is
at least in
why,
the United States.
Maybe that is why no one is talking about it, because it has not aired on Netflix yet.
That's gotta be it. I mean, I can't say that that's all, the only reason, but there's a lot of people that seem to have slept on this show, and it's really sad to me because this is quality anime. Like, you and I have talked about how there's a lot of very mediocre anime coming out recently, and this certainly is not mediocre.
That you can tell that there was a lot of passion poured into this, a lot of talent, a lot of time, a lot of investment, and it definitely pays off. And it's definitely something that you will have a lot to say about because there's a lot of stuff going on with it, and a lot of stuff I'm sure that you'd like.
Yeah. And again, it's not for everyone, but for people like, and you probably didn't even think it was going to be for you when you first started watching it.
No, I didn't.
Look how it came out.
You may just want to give it a try because I think it's just generally a high quality anime.
Yeah. And then when it's over, go show your mother the song Mother.
I think that's a backhanded song, Alex. I know you were trying. I know you were trying for
listen,
pun.
I was trying for a good out, and you fucking ruined it.
It's not my fault that your outs aren't good. But thank you all out there for dropping in to listen to us. We hope you enjoyed it because we sure enjoyed bringing it to you. If you want to check out previous episodes of the podcast, you can find us on YouTube, SoundCloud, iTunes, and Spotify. If you want to keep up with what we're doing, you can join us on Discord, Facebook, Twitter, and our website. Shoot us an email if you have any questions or if you have any ideas for topics you'd like us to talk about in the future. Links to all these things are down below in the description. I have been your host, Sho, and I will see you next time. Say goodnight, Alex.
I just want to say, before we started this, you said, I'm going to try my hardest to keep this under an hour. We're now an hour and 20 minutes in.
Hey, you said the Demon Slayer cast was 90 minutes, so I was below the upper limit.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.